Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Obsidian Paranormal Podcast. I'm Jillian.
And I'm Myron.
And on today's episode, we will be discussing our investigation of the Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York.
Not to be confused with the Stanley Hotel in Colorado.
Which is on the bucket list.
Yes.
We apologize that this episode was delayed by a week. I am preparing for a new cohort of neophyte witches, and I will be teaching them for a year and a day after my last group of students just completed. So I got really bogged down with the preparations for that. So thank you for your patience, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode and that it was worth the wait.
And you may be familiar with the Shanley Hotel because it's been on a bunch of TV shows. It's pretty well known.
Yeah, they actually allow you to rent the entire building for the night, which is what we did. And they are geared specifically for paranormal teams and paranormal investigations. And that's their specialty. And actually the staff on site are paranormal investigators themselves.
And they also have a little gift shop where you can rent some of their equipment if you don't have your own equipment, which comes in handy.
And you can actually even buy some of the equipment. So if you use something that you really like, then you can take it home with you. Also, really convenient is that the history of the building and the reports of activity and claims of activity is well documented.
This is one of my favorite places to investigate because I've stayed there many times, and every time I've stayed there, gotten good evidence.
And this investigation that we did together was no exception to that.
Also, I have to add that when you first see this property, like when you first pull up to it, it is what you would expect a haunted place to look like. It is perfect.
Yeah, it really does have that creep factor. And it's one of the biggest buildings, I think, on that street. So it's like almost like it sets the whole tone for the ambiance of driving up and that anticipation. And I really enjoyed like the whole experience from soup to nuts.
Yeah, and you have the second floor, which is where all the guest rooms are, or most of the guest rooms, because there's a few in the other area of the building. And then you have the third floor, which is like a completely different feel. And the rooms are empty. It looks kind of like it's being renovated. So you kind of have that abandoned building thing going.
I know that they've been putting in a lot of work into restoring and honoring the spirit, no pun intended, of the building. And I believe some of the areas that were under construction when we were there are finished now. But definitely head on over to their website and check it out because they really do love that property. And they've been doing a lot of fundraising and a lot of conscientious construction to restore it.
I'm hoping that they keep the third floor the way it is with the empty rooms. Although there is one room up there that if you're into creepy dolls, it's filled with creepy dolls. But other than that, it's nice.
If you are interested in taking a look at some of the pictures, of course, we have them on our website, obsidianparanormal.org. And also, you can check them out. Their website is The Haunted Shanley Hotel. Altogether, thehauntedShanleyHotel.com. And as always, if you are driving or don't have anything to write that down, we'll also have that in the show notes for you. I don't think this is mentioned on the website, but while we were there, we did discover that 15 miles away from the Shanley Hotel is the Sullivan Correctional Facility. It's currently closed, but Ronnie DeFeo Jr. was imprisoned there until he died at a hospital on March 12th, 2021. And he spent the majority of his incarceration 15 miles away from the Shanley Hotel.
And for those who aren't familiar with who Ronnie DeFeo is, he was the son in the original Amityville Horror case who murdered his family.
So Amityville Horror is an amazing movie and is one of the first Ed and Lorraine Warren cases. And the house is infamous with the windows, and there's been probably like 20 remakes of the Amityville Horror. I think there's one with sharks, maybe one in space. But pretty interesting paranormal link there.
And she's not wrong. Some of the other Amityville movies, they have actually Amityville Christmas Vacation. They have Amityville Thanksgiving. There's a bunch of different ones.
And we did find Amityville Shark House and Amityville in Space. So also, spoiler alert, we did do an investigation in Amityville at the local apothecary there. Highly recommend them. That will come up on another episode. So like, subscribe, do all the things. We did not see any sharks or space creatures while we were there, though.
Oh, there's also an Amityville Bigfoot. We didn't see that one either.
No Bigfoot. No Bigfoot or Big Feet. I don't know. What is the plural of Bigfoot? I'm sure there's people out there with an opinion on that one. But I think we're straying a little bit off the topic. So back to the Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York. The true crime crossover that we seem to be going into right now. One of the claims of activity is that there's a suspected serial killer that stayed in the hotel and is nicknamed Adam, that they believe haunt the halls and is kind of like a ringleader of the spirits on site. With this being a hotel throughout its history, which we'll get into the history in a little bit, the hotel is very significant as a liminal space, which we've talked about on previous episodes. And people who are in transition use the hotel in life. And so the belief is that the Shanley Hotel is also a transitional place for spirits to come and go in death. So Adam is a suspected serial killer that they believe stays there. Some claim that there are over 50 ghosts there at one time. Some other claims of activity is that there is a little boy who they affectionately call Jonathan, plays in the attic, and he will toss a ball back if you throw a ball to him.
Balls. I've heard a few different stories over the years in regards to that spirit. One of them being they believe that it was the spirit of a child who was accidentally killed outside the hotel. And another story being that they believed it was the spirit of an adult pretending to be the child. So who knows?
But I think that's the point of the investigation is nobody really knows for sure. And I always get my hackles up when people say this 100% is always evidence of a spirit and it's 100% this particular historic person, because nobody does know, because it is unknowable on the other side, but it is so much fun to explore and theorize and investigate. And the Shanley Hotel is one of the best places to do that.
The building is huge and it would have taken more than two of us to investigate it. So we did bring along two guests who later joined our team. So
it's actually funny how we met the two gals that were our guests on this investigation and then later our team members. So Heather and Regina are professional house cleaners. And due to some life circumstances, we needed to hire somebody to help out for a little bit temporarily. And we went to the online forums for our town and searched for recommendations of house cleaners. And we met this lovely woman. And Myron was teasing me, saying, this person is going to take one look at your witchy altar and all of your witchy items throughout the house, and she's going to run screaming. And I'm like, well, then she's not the house cleaner for us. So met this lovely gal, toured the house, told her, what areas we needed her to concentrate on. And we were preparing for an investigation and we had our equipment in the living room. And I said to her casually, oh, don't mind this. This won't be here on days that you clean. We have an investigation because we're paranormal investigators. She slowly started backing away and said that she had another quote unquote appointment to get to and she had to leave from up the street. She texted us and said, "I'm so sorry. I have no problems with the fact that you're a practicing witch, but I can't handle the fact that you guys are paranormal investigators. That's way too scary for me." And so we asked her for a recommendation for somebody else, and she gave us Heather and Regina's information. So when we interviewed them, we told them right off the bat that we were paranormal investigators. And then we told them that I was a practicing witch. And they were so excited. They're like, "Oh my God, could we investigate with you?"
Yeah, big difference from the first person.
And it wasn't my witchiness that scared the first person away. It was this paranormal investigating that we do together, which I feel like I had the last word in Myron teasing me about being a scary witch when he was a scary paranormal investigator that recruited me to his spooky ways willingly. So this was the first investigation that Heather and Regina came on. And they were very enthusiastic, very excited, and we were just so happy that we had enthusiastic people with us, and we really had a great time. It was great because even when we shared some of the claims of activity with Heather and Regina in preparation for the investigation, they didn't get scared at all.
And some of the experiences that people have reported are shadow figures, dark apparitions, like dark shadowy apparitions that have been seen moving through the hallways and the rooms of the hotel. And then when you approach them, they disappear. EVPs.
Didn't you have an experience one of the times that you were there?
Actually, I've had experiences almost every time that I've been there, but one time in particular, in the middle of the night, I heard two women out in the hallway arguing, and there were no other guests. And there was no one out there when I went out there, so.
Well, at least you didn't have one of the experiences that people have reported in the Marguerite room, where they feel like somebody's crawling into bed.
Or some of the guests have complained of having jewelry tugged.
Which is very interesting because during the investigation, I mentioned, as we do, we mark different sounds that aren't normal, that a piece of my jewelry was clicking against the handheld camera that I was using. And we believe we captured an EVP, which we'll discuss later, so stick around. But another interesting claim of activity is the holy grail of paranormal investigating, which is full-bodied apparitions.
Like one example is they have a mirror there that you can use for scrying, and people have caught apparitions of a person behind them, which looked pretty clear in the pictures too, because we were shown the pictures when we were there.
Yeah, that's really interesting that they were able to capture an apparition behind somebody in a mirror, because one of the claims of activity that people will often talk about when looking in mirrors, especially in haunted places, is that there is a time when a person's face will morph into generally a skeleton or an old version of your own face, and they'll take that as evidence. But as somebody who regularly scries and who is familiar with that form of divination, that is absolutely normal behavior for scrying, and psychologically can be explained away, that your face just naturally does that when you're staring unblinking into a mirror with your own face. So being able to look beyond that and get an apparition that then can be put on film that we saw the picture of, that is absolutely spectacular evidence in this witch's opinion.
I did the scrying while I was there and didn't see anything when I was looking in there, but that's just me.
And I was recording you when you were doing it, and nothing appeared in our cameras.
I believe Regina was also doing it at one point, and again, nothing.
One of the things that the Shanley makes clear on their website is that the ghosts don't appear on demand. So
do you want to tell us about the history now?
Absolutely. The Shanley Hotel in New York is a beautiful, great vacationing spot, very close to New York City, but far enough away from New York City that it's like a getaway. So it was built in 1845 on Main Street in Napanoch, New York. And it was originally called the Riches Hotel. That's Ritch. And it had a gentleman's club, complete with a bordello. And unfortunately, March 18th of 1895, it did catch fire and burn to the ground, but it was rebuilt the same year. So then James Shanley purchased the hotel in 1906, and that's where it gets its name now, Shanley. And he married a woman named Beatrice Raleigh in 1910. Now, Beatrice was very good friends with the Roosevelts, and that would be Eleanor Roosevelt, who was First Lady, and Thomas Edison was also a contemporary of them. So they were pretty well known and well liked in high society of the time. Actually, James and Beatrice even honeymooned in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, their marriage was struck with tragedy. That Beatrice had 3 births, but those babies did not survive past infancy. And that was something that plagued her the rest of her life. She also sadly lost her sister to influenza during the plague of that time. She was really well liked in the community and really involved the Napanoch community because of the tragedies in her own family. So one of the tragedies that befell the community around the Shanley is that they had a barber who lived on site, and his youngest daughter was named Rosie. When she was only 3 years old, she wandered across the road to a farm, probably to see the animals, I would assume. And there was a wooden slab covering a well, and she peered down inside of the well, fell inside, struck her head, and died. So it is believed that the spirit of Rosie does haunt the halls still. Also, during the time of the hotel, Prohibition happened. So there were speakeasies that happened and a lot of underground criminal activity. So that kind of attracted some seedy characters, including alleged mafia members, hitmen. One of the hitmen was named Joe, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in some of our evidence. As life happens, James passed away, and then Beatrice sold the Shanley. In 1991, after it had passed hands a couple of times, it did close its doors, and it was sat abandoned for over 10 years. That is when a wonderful individual named Salvador, I'm going to say his last name wrong. Can you say it?
I think it's Nicosia.
He purchased the Shanley, and he ran it until his death in 2016.
Yeah, and I got to meet Sal, and he was actually a really nice guy. And during our investigation, we actually tried to communicate with him, but I don't believe we got anything from him.
Yeah, he definitely loved that community. He loved that hotel. He loved paranormal investigators coming in and exploring. And the staff to this day still honors him and his memory. And he can really, not that we have any evidence of this, but my general feeling is that he's still there, or at least his heart is still there in the love of the community and the place.
So getting to the investigation now.
In addition to the equipment that we brought with us, one of the cool things that we mentioned before was that you could use some of the equipment, and they did have like a lovely welcome basket, snacks and all of that. That was a nice perk, but they also allowed us to try out different devices. One, I believe, is called a necrophone, necronomica. I don't know. I'm about to like summon a demon if I say this wrong, but
yeah, I don't remember what it was called. But
it was like a word bank app where it was like an echoey voice and it would speak words similar to like an Ovilus word bank or, some of the apps that are out there. They also had a REM pod tripwire that we used.
The light up pyramid that had the red and green for yes or no, the light up.
Yeah, so it was really fun for us to try out different pieces of equipment that we weren't sure if we wanted to invest in later on. So kind of like a try before you buy. And Heather and Regina absolutely loved that app that was giving them the echoey voice responses. Now, I've said this before. If I don't know how the equipment works, I am a little bit wary about the results. But with this one, it was providing us some real-time feedback that fueled the investigation. And in a couple times, we were actually able to corroborate what we got on their equipment with our own equipment, which is always just a good experience to have all around.
So one example of this microphone thing or whatever it was called is we were using it and Jillian had told a joke. And we didn't really get any response. So we were like, did you not find that funny? And we then got what sounds like a man laughing. And Jillian, what was the joke?
Okay, this is my favorite joke. And if you don't laugh at this joke, I don't know what would make you laugh. And this is one of like my favorite kid-friendly jokes. So, how do you catch a unique rabbit? Unique up on it. How do you catch a tame rabbit? The tame way.
And that was a part of the joke that the spirit there found amusing.
I still love that joke. I think my nephew told me this when he was in elementary school, and that is just my all-time favorite joke. And I'm just glad that the spirits also found that amusing and laughed with me or maybe at me. Who knows?
Yeah, and that clip was caught in the seance room, which oddly enough is where we caught a lot of our evidence that night. So Stephanie, who was the staff on site, investigated with us in the beginning of the investigation. And one of the things that they have there is a briefcase that has an object in there that she didn't tell us what it was. And Jillian actually guessed correctly what was in the briefcase. Yeah, we won't mention what was in there in case anyone listening decides to go there and they want to guess on their own. We don't want to give it away.
Yeah, and it was a haunted object that was actually sent into the hotel by somebody who knew the reputation of the hotel and just did not want that object in their house anymore. So it wasn't anything that was easily guessed, like, oh, it's a bell from, or like a guest book. It wasn't anything hotel related in there. So one of the other things that happened in the seance room, though, is we were using the yes or no pyramid where like one side would light up red for no, green for yes. And we did get a response. Yeah.
One of the questions we had asked was if they liked us. And it lit up red. So I guess that means no. But that was the only time while we were in there that lit up.
But it's really interesting that another piece of evidence that we caught that we heard later on was an EVP regarding another thing about me, where when I go into an investigation, I do call upon certain guides, guardians, gods, goddesses that I work with on a regular basis to protect me, to protect us, protect the team, everything. So one of the goddesses that I work with is pretty protective over me, especially. And one time during the investigation, I didn't have any evidence of it, but I was just getting the sense that one of the spirits was just getting really too interested in our newbie guests. And so in my own mind, I had spoken to the goddess that I speak with on a regular basis and just had asked her to protect me and to protect our guests. And we caught was it an EVP or was it in the spirit box?
No, it was an EVP. And it's interesting because I didn't know this, that Jillian did that. So when I was listening back to the evidence is when we caught an EVP.
And what did it say?
It said, "Please stop your goddess," which at the time I listened to it made no sense, but it was pretty clear. It was a whisper. And when I played it back for Jillian,
it made absolutely perfect sense because I had been asking the goddess for help at that time. Some other significant things that we encountered was part of the history that I just talked about was that there was the claim of activity that the hitman for the mafia allegedly was named Joe. And we did get the name Joe in the voice tablet that the Shanley provided.
There was a point when you were doing the SDs and we had asked how many of us were there, and it said 5, and there were 5 of us. There was the team and the staff member that was there, and we had also in that same clip had asked what rooms we were staying in, and it actually said the rooms.
And then I mentioned earlier you had mentioned about the claim of activity that people feel like their jewelry is being tugged on. And I was just narrating that my necklace was banging up against the camera, and we got an EVP of what we believe we hear the word chair, which I don't know if maybe the person who tugs on jewelry is connected to a chair, an object in the room, or maybe, somebody had lost a necklace in a chair. But also there is a point where Heather had asked if Rosie was the spirit that was trying to communicate, Rosie again being the child who fell down the well. And we do get a response in the necrophone that says it's not.
Another experience that we had was the tripwire light thingy lit up when we asked it to.
Yes, it's always cool when you can see it in real time. So we got very excited about that. Yeah, that's a really great video that I'll be posting on our YouTube channel soon. And I do want to just promise you guys that we will be posting this evidence onto our YouTube channel. We're just trying to figure out right now an aesthetically pleasing way to present that evidence, because a lot of it is audio. And I want to know, do you want to see a waveform in the background? Do you want to see pictures of the investigation in the background? Do you want to see footage of our investigation from the IR cameras and then the evidence being played over it? So if you have any creative ideas on a creative, nice way to present these clips to you, email us at obsidianparanormal@gmail.com. Would love your suggestions.
Yeah, either way, we're going to definitely post it because we're not going to be saying that we caught stuff and then not letting you guys hear it.
And a couple people have suggested to us to share some of the clips here in the podcast itself. But from a technical standpoint, we're making sure that if you're listening in your car, if you're listening in earbuds, that the quality of the audio remains consistent. And the spirit boxes come on very loud, and then the EVPs are very soft. And we don't want you to have to be turning your volume up and down, or if you're listening to this as you're relaxing, to have a spirit box come on and startle everybody in the room. So it is in the works. It is coming. And we hope that you're excited to see these things as we are.
And for some of these, we may ask your guys' opinions on what you hear, because there's a few where each of us hear something completely different, but we both hear it crystal clear what we're hearing.
Right. There's no question that what we captured is some sort of evidence, but the words aren't clear. And it's kind of like the gold and white dress versus the blue and black dress debate is I'll clearly hear something and Myron will clearly hear something else. And then we'll have somebody else listen and they'll take a side or hear something completely different. So some of it could be our own shared experiences, our own biases, or even language barriers, because I oftentimes will hear Hungarian in the American radio stations that we're switching through in the spirit boxes, whereas Myron will hear something that sounds more like an English word because he wasn't raised by a Hungarian father. So we would love your opinion on some of these. And that's why we also even refer to it as potential evidence, because somebody may come in and be like, oh, no, that's clearly a dog barking. And then it's just like, oh, yeah, there was a dog.
Also the possibility that maybe whatever's communicating may have something to tell one person, but nobody else. So maybe that person is hearing what they're hearing and somebody's hearing something completely different.
There's even been times when one of us or both of us have even agreed that this EVP is definitely saying this phrase. And then 6 months later, we'll go back and revisit it, and we'll both hear something completely different. So I believe that there is a paranormal element to the paranormal evidence, that the scientific and the empirical data of this is a recording of an actual event seems to change. And I can't explain that. If any of you guys have theories, please write them in. We'd love to hear your theories. All right. So with all that being said, what do you think? Is the Shanley Hotel haunted or not?
Oh, yeah. This is one of those places that I definitely, no question, because the amount of personal experiences I've had there, the amount of evidence that's been caught there, it's like every time. So, yeah, I have no question.
Yes, same. I feel like between our equipment picking up stuff and the Shanley equipment that they let us use picking up stuff, no question, this hotel definitely lives up to its reputation and is haunted. So again, I wanted to thank you all for your patience in this episode coming out a little bit late. We hope you enjoy. Our next episode, we will be discussing the 2 investigations that we did of the Old Well Tavern in Simsbury, Connecticut. This one's going to be really interesting because the 2 investigations were spaced far enough apart that the tavern changed owners and renovations happened in between. So, as always, please like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. And until 2 weeks when the next episode drops, stay spooky.